We, of course, are familiar with the 3 Tacoma police officers who were charged with murder, tried for murder, and acquitted in the 2020 death of Manny Ellis. Now, as is pretty normal for the media ecosystem, particularly around issues related to race and policing. A lot of coverage of the trial, of the accusations, and not so much on the acquittal and what's been happening with some of these officers after the fact. I have already said my piece on this. On 2 fronts. First of all, of course, police officers need to be held accountable if they break the law. They have a tremendous amount of power. And so when there are examples of them violating policy and violating the law, of course, I have no issue with them being tried for that. But that's not what this is. This was Attorney General Bob Ferguson trying to build even more of a reputation for himself on the coattails of the race and social justice movement by trying 3 police officers, by politically prosecuting them. He is now 0 for 4 in the political prosecutions of police officers through his office. And that's really what I believe this was. And I think the jury obviously agrees that there just was not evidence to bring these officers to trial. So the last story we did on this, one of the officers, Christopher Burbank, he'd found a new job as a Thurston County Sheriff's deputy, and then some members of the community got mad about it, so he kind of felt pressured to resign from that position. Now we're hearing from another one of the officers, Officer Timothy Rankine. And I'm just going to note going into this, because it's relevant, he's Asian. He's an Asian American, and apparently Asians aren't considered like people of color because everyone painted in the media and the left wing this Manny Ellis as an issue of racism. He was killed because of racism. So Officer Timothy Rankine and his wife, separately but together, are filing claims against not only the city of Tacoma, but also the state of Washington, and specifically the Office of Attorney General Bob Ferguson. This from the Seattle Times. So they're planning a defamation suit, but the lead up to a lawsuit is a claim process. That's how it works when you're going after a government agency. It says Joan Mell, an attorney representing Timothy Rankine, and his wife, Catherine Chin, filed claims on behalf of the couple in March with the city of Tacoma and Washington Attorney General Bob Ferguson. Rankine is seeking $35 million in damages from the city and the state, and Chin, his wife, is seeking $12 million, according to copies of their filings provided by Joan Mell. Rankine and Chin's filings do not reference specific statements by the city or attorney general or describe the ongoing threats or violence they say they have experienced. So let's dive into exactly what their claims say. So I've kind of lumped them together because, again, they did file separate claims for damages with both the city and the state, but I put their forms on a single page so it's just easier to follow. So let's look at the claim against the city of Tacoma. So this is from Officer Rankine's claim. It says, describe what happened. He said, politically motivated, false accusations of racial bias policing and criminal misconduct, creating a hostile work environment, inciting hatred, threats, against me and my family. It says, how was the city of Tacoma involved? He writes, elected officials and employees made false statements to the public in press conferences, meetings, and directives, wrongfully and falsely accused me of criminal misconduct. And when I read that, I thought of the mayor of Tacoma, who came out before any evidence had been heard or before any trial and said these officers needed to lose their job and made it seem and sound like a racial justice issue. It says, describe any damage or injury. The usual and ordinary damages and harm from discrimination and defamation, past and future economic losses, and my reputation, which, again, you look at what happened with Christopher Burbank. Is he going to be able to get a job again? I don't know. Is Timothy Rankine going to be able to continue to work as a police officer? So he's saying the defamation has hurt his reputation and his ability to get another job. His wife said in hers that the city incited hatred and hostilities against she and her husband. Damage to my marriage and personal safety, severe emotional distress. I imagine that she went through some severe and emotional distress. The question is the city at fault for that? And that's what they're going to have to prove. Now, the claim that was filed with the state of Washington is very interesting because it explicitly says, state agency or department alleged responsible for damage and injury, Attorney General Bob Ferguson and his staff. So the claim is directly about the alleged conduct of the Attorney General himself. It says, describe the cause of the injury or damages, explain the extent of property loss or medical, physical, or mental injuries. This is from Timothy Rankine. Politically motivated, false accusations of racial bias and criminal misconduct creating a hostile work environment. His wife said, inciting racially motivated hatred toward my husband and his work as a law enforcement officer, disrupting and interfering with our marriage and my ability to live and work safely without fear of retaliation and reprisal, using politically motivated false statements in criminal prosecution of my husband for conduct that was not true. Again, directed at Attorney General Bob Ferguson, the damages they're seeking from the state of Washington to the tune of $35 million. Once again, Bob Ferguson's political posturing, his efforts to further his political career, to set himself up for a run for governor, to capitalize off of anger from Black Americans around policing in this country. He decides to take 3 officers to trial, lacking any evidence that they violated the existing policies, and that's what's key here. There was no evidence they violated the policies they were allowed to work under and conduct themselves through. And that's why they weren't convicted at trial. But Bob Ferguson wanted a feather in his cap to say, I put 3 police officers in prison for murder. Elect me governor. And the result is going to fall on all of us. He plays politics, the rest of us pay for it. Time and time and time and time again. I think of him going after the, what was it, Nicole? The
wedding cake?
Not the wedding cake. The one, it's not Goodwill. It's Value Village.
Oh, Value Village.
Going after Value Village. And what does it do? It cost us millions of dollars when he lost that case. So, I mean, losing cases as the Attorney General, that's part of the job. You're not going to win every single time. But what happened in the Value Village case when he tried to say that they were misrepresenting themselves essentially as a charity, that the judge says, hey, by the way this stuff is supposed to work, you were supposed to go to them first and just say, look, we don't think that you're operating the way you should. Do you want to fix it? Bypassed that. Why go and just be reasonable? Bypass that. Let's file a big fat lawsuit against them so that I can put out another press release saying, look what I'm doing for the state of Washington. Hell, maybe I'll even send some letters out, some chicken checks out to people in an election year. Ruin people's lives, ruin their wives' lives, put them on trial for murder. One of the worst things you can do to a human being is threaten their life and liberty. And yeah, I mean, if I were Timothy Rankine's wife, I would absolutely be suing as well. And you might recall the name of their attorney, Joan Mell. It would be familiar to you because we've had Joan on the show before. She was representing the Washington Coalition for Open Government in public records cases. And she said on the show, she really isn't a fan of Bob Ferguson because of the way that he operates politically and the fact that he hides stuff from people, that he just operates in a way that she doesn't find to be honest. And so to see her name on this, I thought that's a good attorney to choose.